When you think of post-apocalyptic games in today's world, you usually gravitate towards the Fallouts, The Last of Us, the Mad Max, or the Metro game series. And while those are all great games in their own respective rights, you have the narrative storytelling that The Last of Us brings to the table, then you have the expansive and dense worlds of Fallout and Metro. What makes these worlds so fascinating is that they're part of our imaginations in sort of a what if scenario. But here in Stalker 2, the situation and the area is a little bit more real this time. While yes, you're going to have some weird sciencey shit that's going to be going on, like floating balls of electricity, mini tornadoes, or invisible enemies like squid monsters, but I digress. The point that I'm trying to make here is a lot of the surrounding map of Stalker 2 and Chernobyl is going to be something that has experienced a real life catastrophe. And watching the HBO limited series of Chernobyl has also definitely deepened my love for this game and the topics surrounding the exclusion zone and what goes on within its dwellings. So being able to have a game where I'm able to fully walk around, dive into it, albeit with a little bit of an alternate history timeline, is a pretty cool thing to me. The game itself isn't going to be something that is for everyone, and I can tell you right now, this is going to be a hardcore, punishing game that is going to turn a lot of people off, whether it's the menu system, the carry weight implementation, or just the overall design of the game. While those aspects of the game were frustrating at times, never did it stop me from playing and enjoying this game.
Жизнь, которую я готов вернуть, если потребуется.
Я буду защищать ее. Всегда.
As I do with all of my reviews, I like to start off with a little bit of a technical block. So I went ahead and I played Stalker 2 on PC through the Game Pass app on an RTX 4080 and an i7 13700K with all the settings turned up to their max settings and frame generation set to on. So it took me about 40-ish hours to beat this game, and over the course of that 40 hours, it ran pretty smooth. There were a few frame dips and hitches, but nothing too egregious that really ruined my playtime. Sadly, what did ruin my playtime was at about the 20-hour mark, I encountered a bug that stopped all progression in the main story, and I was unable to talk to a particular character that I needed to. And I tried nearly everything that I could do, trying to walk around, save a different time of day, everything. And eventually, my last resort was to reload a save 2 hours previously in hopes that it might fix it, replay everything that I just did. I did that and it did work. I did read that you can also use console commands to sort of complete the quest, but then you would have to use it to also start the next quest. And I didn't really want to risk breaking my game, nor should I have to do that to progress the main story. And unfortunately, it does look like the progression blocking bugs isn't just something that I myself have ran into. It seems like tons of players are running into progression blocking bugs all over the game. So it's not just me. Another aspect of the game that is actually totally borked right now and is not working at all is the A life system. What this A life system is that it allows the game to simulate the zone and the people within the zone independently from the player and their actions. And that system just isn't working, or I don't even think it's in the game right now. Instead of roaming bandits that you come across, more often than not, the enemies will literally spawn right on top of you. You can be in an underground bunker that you've just cleared out, be looting some bodies, and the game will literally spawn enemies directly on top of you. This was arguably one of the more frustrating bugs that I encountered throughout the duration of my playthrough, and it never stopped me from playing the game, but it would get really frustrating, and especially at times when I wasn't expecting it. Speaking a little bit more on the technical side of things, the fact that GCS Gameworld were actually even able to get this game out is a damn near miracle to me. If you didn't know better, that would sound like a little bit of a backhand compliment, but this studio has been working on and creating this game while in the middle of an invasion from Russia. You see, GCS Gameworld is a Ukrainian based developer, which also happens to be the same country that the Chernobyl accident actually happened in. This isn't just a game for most of them, it's a retelling of their life and their livelihood. The Chernobyl incident and event is something that possibly the developers themselves might have had to experience as a child growing up. Then you have the threat of war stacked on top of them while trying to deliver a game. Making a game is enough pressure enough, but then that added on top, it's pressure like I've never seen before. And if you actually want to learn a little bit more about the development of the game and the issues that the team had to face while making the game, I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to link a documentary that both Xbox and GCS have uploaded. It's going to run you about 90 minutes to about 2 hours, but well, with your time, it goes over all the challenges, the trials, the tribulations that they had to go through, even just to get this game out. And I really think it's worth your time and you should check it out. What is a stalker? A stalker in the context of this game is someone who illegally enters the Chernobyl exclusion zone in search of artifacts or unique properties. Stalker 2 is a game that is going to piss a lot of people off. The gameplay of Stalker 2 isn't going to be that much different from, say, Metro or Fallout. When you're looting, you're scavenging for gear out in the open world, you'd think that they're pretty similar. And when your average consumer looks at the gameplay, they might be a little shocked to figure out that these games are almost entirely different. Whereas Metro and Fallout could have mechanics like food, hunger, and water, Stalker 2 has these elements baked into its gameplay in ways that can affect you as you're playing. These aren't going to be something that is just constantly annoying you, but they're there just enough to remind you to keep an eye on them as you progress throughout the zone. If you run through barbed wire, it's going to cut you, so you're going to need to bandage that up. Stuff like that, just small little things. You're going to have to eat food to have a little bit more energy. You can crack energy drinks. It's all little things that help add depth to the game and the story. And speaking of the story of Stalker 2, at first it wasn't something that was really grabbing me when I was playing, and I can admit that I spent a large chunk of the early main missions kind of spreading them out and not going from main mission to main mission. I forgot a lot of the people who I was talking to, what I was supposed to be doing half the time, and that's nothing on the game's fault, just how I was sort of playing and experiencing that game at first. Because running from main mission to main mission, I think, would get kind of boring in this game. And yes, you're going to be doing a lot of running back and forth. There is a full day and night cycle that you also have to account when you're making these trips back and forth, because nighttime can be one scary motherfucker. What the game does for me off the get go and what I felt right away was something that Metro and both Fallout would scratch for me. It's that feeling of being completely alone in the middle of a wasteland. You come across an abandoned building, and you could just go on about your day, or you could explore that building, see where it takes you, what might be hidden within it, what loot you might find. Sometimes just wandering out into the zone and seeing what you could find to bring back and sell. That's how I spent a few of my early sessions on in the game as well. And you do spend, I guess, I'd say probably the first like 10 to 15 hours or so just doing that, just doing missions, going back and forth. You don't really have a sense of direction, but about a third of the way through the game, there's sort of this big curtain drop moment for me where a lot of the game is revealed and sort of what the goals are for the main characters here in play. And what turns out to be what you think is a simple revenge story, it's a lot more twisted and fucked up in the back half. And I actually kind of liked where the story ended by the time it was all said and wrapped up. There's plenty of areas within the game where you can actually make choices as well that will affect how the rest of your game is going to play out, and also what missions will be available to you in the future. So, whether you want to side with a particular faction or you want to leave someone alive when another group maybe wants you to kill them, these are all choices that the player themselves gets to make. And I really like that we had these options. And from what I've been able to see, there's actually 4 different endings to the main game, so there's plenty of replay value when it comes to these choices. This progression of going through the game's first 10 or so hours and just learning the zone and getting your feet wet was a nice start for me, but I can personally see a lot of people dropping off before this point or even really early on, because a lot of this game is going to be walking vast distances with your occasional combat or your spectral anomalies. The humans aren't going to be your only threat here out in the zone, with many of the local wildlife wanting to hunt you down, and these just aren't your normal dogs. I'm talking a dog that can conjure up psychic projections of itself like goddamn Mysterio, and only stopping once you've taken down the real one. Let's also not forget the giant rat bunnies, or the meatball cows, or the boars. The zone isn't a happy go lucky place that you can just roam around, and very rarely are you actually safe in this game, especially when you're outside one of the major base areas or hub areas. And arguably the most dangerous thing that you will run into out in the zone are going to be the mutant variants. These mutant variants are people that have been afflicted with high dosages of radiation, as well as a little bit of something else, but I won't spoil that here for you. These creatures range from enemies that can go invisible, that'll stalk you in dark corridors. Then you have your different mutants that can literally pull the guns from your hand and use them against you. Or the ones that crawl on the floors like little rats. All this might sound like a lot to deal with, and while surviving out in the zone, you also have to contend with the spectral anomalies that I mentioned. These spectral anomalies can range from shooting fire out of the ground, a floating orb of electricity that will follow you around and shock you, a tornado. You get the point. Everything out here in the zone is trying to kill you, every which way, every which direction. So making sure that you're all geared up for each trip is going to be an essential component to this game. The other key component to Stalker would be the progression and gear. Stalker 2 isn't going to have a skill tree or a big upgrade system for your character that you'll dump points into. Instead, it's actually going to be based around your knowledge of the zone and how it operates. what you need to avoid, and what gear you might need to have equipped when you're entering. First off, when you start the game, you're going to feel weak, and I mean very weak, almost too weak to a certain point. But as you spend more and more time in the zone, you'll come across better gear. Say you start out with a shitty AK that jams. Yes, weapon durability and degrading is something that will affect your guns, jamming in the middle of a combat encounter, so you have to make sure that your weapons are maintained and at least in good condition when you're going out on these excursions. And out on these excursions is where you can obviously find better loot, better attachments. It's possible you might come across a fully kitted M4 with suppressor like I did. That gun stuck with me for a majority of my playtime, but as you start to build out your repertoire of guns and weapons, you start to have to weigh your options and think, okay, is this gun worth keeping versus a newer, maybe better one that isn't fully upgraded yet? So it might take you a little bit more time to get those better attachments, but in the long run, it might end up actually being more worth it. And if you don't find any of these particular attachments or weapons out in the world, you're always able to track them down possibly at one of the game's many vendors in the hub areas. And so these vendors can also upgrade your weapon, maybe give it less weapon sway, more damage, less weight. It can also do the same thing to your armor as well. These vendors are going to be your best friend because whatever you don't find out in the zone, like I said, more often than not, they're going to have what you're looking for. Ammo, attachments, new armor, meds, you name it, they've probably got it. These items and gear upgrades are actually where you're going to spend a lot of your coupons that you earn. And yes, the currency is called coupons. It cracks me up every time. And I like the way that this game handles that gear. Like how I mentioned, is that yes, you can have that sort of armor that you keep and you want to take with you at all times. But is it better to get a new armor or keep investing in the one that you have? Because you have to sort of look at what the max possibility or potential for each armor set could be, allowing you to kind of weigh those different scenarios. There's one where it's an exoskeleton, sort of like something out of Advanced Warfare. And at first, the suit isn't going to allow you to sprint, but if you put a little bit more money and time into it, you'll actually be able to sprint also while having the benefits of that suit, like the increased carry weight. And the carry weight is definitely something that is going to bother a lot of people in this game because you're constantly going to be picking up stuff and you're constantly going to be getting full on items. And now you can go and sell those excess items to vendors for money, or you can store it in a chest in one of the hub or city areas. You actually see a chest marked on your mini map, and the game doesn't tell you what this chest is, but it basically acts as a universal stash that you can access at any box location. It's basically an unlimited storage bin that you can dump all your ammo, meds, extra weapons. I use it to rotate my weapons in and out so that I'm not constantly burning through the same ammo, while also allowing me to build up a stock of ammo for other guns down the line as well. And one of the last things that you also have to take into account when you're building out your outfit is your artifact slots. These artifacts can range from giving you more radiation damage, more carry weight, maybe making you a little lighter. They all have different ways that they can affect your game, but they're all out there in the world for you to find. Stalker 2 manages to do something that not many games are able to do, and that's making me feel totally alone within a world where it's just you, your objective, or you want to get lost exploring, doing side quests in different objectives. It's a game that has some pretty in depth ways for you to interact with its world and its systems, but it's also a game that doesn't tell the players shit and they have to figure out a lot of it for themselves or look up a guide online. Stalker 2 isn't a game that I would just recommend to anyone off the street or even some of my close friends, in fact. This is a type of hardcore shooter game with a lot of Euro jank that is going to be for a very small group of people, but for those that are into this type of game, the reception seems to be pretty positive so far. There are, like I said, a few annoying bugs. The progression bugs obviously are the most egregious personally for me. There are some of the little smaller moment to moment gameplay bugs that do pop up time to time, especially the A-Life system. And I imagine a lot of this game's more immediate future is going to be spent on fixing the game's litany of bugs, as well as that A-Life 2.0 system. All these things mentioned, you would think that the game sucks, or I didn't like it, or I didn't enjoy my time. But I actually really enjoyed my time with Stalker 2. It's one of the best looking games I've played this year, and I know that seems like I'm saying that in nearly every video, but it's gorgeous, man. I don't know what to tell you. Stalker 2 manages to be both breathtaking but also scary as shit, especially at nighttime when you hear sound out in the wilderness and you just aren't sure, is it the wind? Is it a mutant running up on you? Am I going crazy? The atmosphere of the game and the world that GCS Gameworld have crafted here is something I had a lot of fun running around and exploring when the game was working as intended. There were times where I did have to step away and take a break from the game because I was just getting so frustrated and felt like I was fighting the game more than I was enjoying it. So I really do hope that GCS can take the time to get this game in a lot more smoother state before they go about adding more content into the game. There is a post launch roadmap that details, I believe, 2 expansions that are coming to the game, along with some talks of a multiplayer mode that will allow you to play the game with your friends. But the near future focus, I think, really should be on bug fixes and player feedback. Like, please, for the love of God, give me night vision goggles. I can see them on people's foreheads. Just let me take them. Small things like that would go a long way for the players and just the overall health of the game. And I think if the resilience of the team these past few years is any indication, I think GCS are up to the task. All right, this part's going to be for the real ones. I do want to apologize for not having a review, I guess, the last month or so. My grandmother recently passed away at the end of September, and I've been dealing with some stuff with that. And then we had her funeral here most recently this month, so personally, I've just been dealing with a lot of that and trying to balance a ton of games. I got the camo grind done in Black Ops 6, so I'm happy that's over and I can finally just play the game and play other games now. I hope to have a review for Indiana Jones sometime, maybe next week. That's sort of the plan. Depends on how long the game is. I'm not entirely sure. You also have Marvel Rivals coming out. I thought about doing a video on the full release for that. Then you also have Delta Force that is coming out as well. And then the Call of Duty Zombies map that I am going to try to go play after I wrap up this video. So if you did enjoy the video, make sure to drop a like. Let me know what you thought down below. And if you did make it this far, I just want to say thank you for taking the time out of your day. And this has been my review for Stalker 2, Heart of Chernobyl. Thank you for watching.